The marble floor of the temple is freezing, but for Medusa, the air has turned to liquid obsidian. Silence stuffed heavy, suffocating, an absolute that clings to the vaulted ceiling like a shroud. She is no longer a daughter of the sea or a chosen devotee. She is a fractured vessel of cosmic disappointment. High above, the golden armor of Athena reflects not light, but a cold, calculated judgment. There is no warmth in the goddess's gaze, only the sharp geometry of a strategy being finalized. Athena does not see a woman trembling. She sees a loose thread in the tapestry of Olympus that must be woven into a different design.
Do you believe that an ending is truly a cessation of purpose?
Medusa tries to speak, but her throat is already tight with the encroaching calcification of her spirit. She was once the pride of these halls, her voice a melody of devotion. Now, she is merely raw material. Athena descends, her sandals making no sound against the cold stone, approaching with the clinical detachment of a sculptor deciding where to drive the chisel. The goddess reaches out, her fingers brushing against the crown of Medusa's head. It is not an act of comfort. It is a claim of ownership. A flicker of something ancient and terrible ignites in Athena's eyes that a hunger for a weapon that can command obedience through pure, unadulterated terror. She isn't here to punish a transgression. She is here to harvest a legacy. As Medusa feels the warmth of her own humanity begin to crystallize, fading into an eternal, icy stillness, Athena leans close, a terrifying smile gracing her lips.
You shall not be forgotten. You shall be the very wall that guards my kingdom, watching for an eternity as I erase your name from history.
The world turns to stone, but just as the final light fades, Medusa hears a sound that defies the silence. The rhythmic, approaching thud of iron boots, and the metallic ring of a blade being drawn. Someone is coming, but they are not here to save her. The transition is not one of spirit, but of utility. Where once there was the warmth of breath, there is now only the cold, unyielding resonance of tempered bronze. Athena stands amidst the stillness, her hands steady, guided not by mercy, but by the relentless precision of a grand strategist. She does not see the woman who once prayed at her altar. She sees a relic, an instrument of absolute psychological warfare. To the world, the Aegis is a shield of protection, a symbol of the divine order. To Athena, it is a canvas upon which she paints the ultimate deterrent. She carefully secures the relic, binding it to the center of the celestial metal. The bronze seems to shiver at the contact, as if the very air recognizes that a boundary between the mortal and the eternal has been irrevocably violated. Athena's expression remains unreadable, a mask of pristine, polished perfection that betrays nothing of the artifice beneath. She is the architect of a new kind of fear, one that does not require physical confrontation to defeat an adversary. She has perfected the art of making an enemy stop, tremble, and shatter simply by looking upon the truth of her power. Yet, as the last binding is secured, a strange ripple shivers across the polished surface. It is a faint, rhythmic vibration, echoing from deep within the metallic trap. It is not the sound of a mechanical object settling, but the undeniable, frantic cadence of a heartbeat that refuses to go silent. Athena draws back, her eyes narrowing as the reflection on the shield begins to warp and shift. The gaze from the bronze is no longer a static image. It is beginning to track her every movement with a terrifying, sentient focus. She realizes, with a chilling jolt of uncertainty, that she has not just captured an object, she has invited a storm into her own fortress. The battlefield is a tapestry of shifting shadows, but the center of it all is a void. Athena glides across the threshold of the conflict, her presence commanding an unnatural stillness. The Aegis rests upon her arm, no longer merely a defensive relic, but a focal point of existential dread. She does not need to draw a weapon. She simply presents the truth of the shield. As the opposing ranks charge, their momentum collapses. It is not the physical weight of the bronze that stops them, but the sudden, paralyzing realization that they are being watched by something that has transcended the veil of existence. The air grows heavy, thick with the scent of ozone and forgotten vows. Those who look upon the Aegis find their internal architecture crumbling. The very essence of their resolve is drained away, replaced by a crystalline immobility. Athena watches, her composure unwavering. She observes the transformation with the detached curiosity of an alchemist studying a reaction. To her, this is not a battlefield. It is an experiment in absolute influence. She has commodified the concept of despair, turning the tragic history of her former devotee into a barrier that no mortal can breach. She moves through the frozen lines of adversaries as if walking through a gallery of statues, her pace rhythmic and unchallenged. Yet, as she passes the outermost perimeter of the chaos, the Aegis begins to grow impossibly warm. A frantic, discordant hum resonates through the metal, vibrating against her arm. The image etched upon the shield is no longer passive. The eyes are wide, and a single, shimmering fissure begins to spiderweb across the surface, defying the immortality of the divine work. From the deepest core of the relic, a sound emerges. A faint, melodic whisper that calls out a name Athena has spent lifetimes trying to erase from the halls of Olympus. Deep within the cold, molecular lattice of the bronze, existence has become a relentless, sensory echo chamber. For the consciousness once known as Medusa, time has lost its linearity, fracturing into a kaleidoscope of reflected gazes and hollow victories. She is the prisoner of 1,000 reflections, forced to witness the world through the unblinking, obsidian periphery of the Aegis. Every time the shield is raised, she is projected into the heart of the fray, a silent sentry compelled to project an agony that is no longer hers to command. The psychological weight is an oceanic pressure. She feels the vibration of the goddess arm, a constant, rhythmic reminder of her subjugation. There is no respite in this forced immortality. Each time Athena faces an adversary, Medusa is the one who must reach out across the veil to shatter the enemy resolve, effectively serving as the hand that executes the goddess' will. It is a grotesque paradox. She is the instrument of the very power that keeps her entombed. She reaches out with her fractured essence, attempting to scream against the metal, but her voice is repurposed into a wave of paralyzing, sightless terror that sweeps across the field. Yet, in the deepest silence between battles, when the goddess rests, the prisoner begins to peel back the layers of her own incarceration. She discovers that the very trauma Athena weaponized acts as a conductive bridge. By focusing her fragmented memories, the warmth of the sun, the sound of the tides, the feeling of a life before the shroud, she begins to exert a subtle, corrosive influence upon the divine alloy. A hairline fracture of autonomy spreads from within. As Athena prepares for the next campaign, she fails to notice that the reflection in the shield is no longer mimicking her own stern expression. It is beginning to smile, and the bronze is starting to weep tears of molten light. Athena moves through the hallowed halls of Olympus as if the architecture itself were built to worship her stride. Her armor gleams with the cold perfection of a statue, projecting an aura of unflinching wisdom and righteous order. Yet, behind the mask of divine composure, a subtle tremor of dissonance has begun to manifest. She has long championed herself as the architect of justice, a beacon of clarity in a chaotic cosmos. But the Aegis, her most prized instrument of control, has become a mirror of her own moral erosion. She observes the shield with the analytical gaze of a strategist, yet for the first time, she cannot interpret the data. The relic is no longer a passive, hollow container of fear. It is humming with an erratic, rhythmic discordance that threatens to destabilize the very harmony she claims to uphold. Athena realizes, with a dawning chill, that she has not simply mastered a weapon. She has cultivated a parasite of her own creation. By binding the fragments of a broken soul to her cause, she has invited an unquantifiable variable into the heart of her influence. Is it truly justice if the foundation is built upon the stolen essence of the disenfranchised? The question surfaces, unbidden and sharp, piercing through her divine ego. She attempts to suppress it, reinforcing her cold, intellectual shell, but the reflection on the bronze begins to shift independently. It no longer mirrors her stern authority. Instead, it reflects a version of herself that is fraying at the edges. As she reaches out to steady the shield, the surface turns liquid, refusing her touch. The bronze ripples like dark water, and from the depths of the metal, a hand, ethereal, pale, and unmistakably alive, begins to emerge, reaching upward to pull the goddess into the void. The hand that emerged from the bronze was not a reach for vengeance, but a reclamation of identity. As the boundary between the goddess and her artifact dissolved, the cold perfection of Olympus fractured. Athena stood frozen, not in the paralysis of stone, but in the sudden, crushing weight of empathy. In that singular moment of contact, the barrier of godhood vanished, and the long-silent story of a soul once discarded was laid bare. The Aegis did not shatter, it simply ceased to be a shield. It crumbled into stardust, releasing the echo of 1,000 years of imprisonment back into the eternal currents of the cosmos. What remains is not a monument to victory, but a silent testament to the cost of unchecked ambition. Athena, the architect of cold logic, is left with the haunting clarity that true power cannot be built upon the foundations of another's erasure. History often clothes itself in the gilded armor of justice, yet behind every legendary emblem, there often lies the shadow of a forgotten casualty, the spirit that paid the price for the glory of the divine. Medusa is no longer a tool of terror, nor a relic of a goddess's vanity. She has returned to the silence of the elements, finally liberated from the iron grip of a history written by the victors. As the dust settles upon the altar, we are reminded that myths are not merely tales of power, they are warnings etched in the stone of our collective memory. Every icon we revere, and every hero we crown, carries a burden of complexity that we are often too afraid to uncover. Look closely at the legends that define our world, for in the dark, reflective depths of their triumphs, we may find the echoes of the voices they sought to silence. We must choose, with every breath of our own humanity, whether we are building shields to isolate our pride, or opening doors to heal the wounds of the past.